drum and bass is an English music as hip-hop is an American music. Although there are people making drum and bass in America and there are people making hip-hop in the UK, I think most people will acknowledge that those musics come from their origins. And as hip-hop in America is very close-minded to outside music, drum and bass in the UK is very close-minded to outside influences.
British hip-hop has always had a hard time, you know, the same way that we have a hard time giving back to them what they made. That's how they feel, you know, about hip-hop, because we made hip-hop, and so when we hear them do it, like, we're like, nah, because like we could hear the difference. And to us, like, we're like, man, like, our tracks are just as good as your tracks, you know, but like, you know, to them, like, they're like, nah, mate, the bass isn't right. Nah, mate, the snares aren't hitting, you know, and it's like, cool, you know, because like, I understand where they're coming from, you know?
It's like a UK hip-hop DJ coming to spin, like, somewhere in New York. Even if he's, like, real dope, like, you know, somehow, like, they have a little prejudice against that, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like, what the fuck does this UK nigga know about hip-hop?
A lot of the kids in the US basically have this US versus UK animosity. I don't know if it's animosity or what you want to call it. It needs to stop, basically. I mean, if you want to be good and you want to make a good tune and have it roll harder than a UK tune, then make a tune that's that good. We know we have good DJs here. A lot of the DJs here in the US, most of them are really good. I think that we just need to stop looking at the other side only in that negative aspect. A good tune is a good tune, I don't care where it comes from. That's how I see it.
It's not really the point where you come from, like, you know, it's what the music's like, so I don't really get to, you know, because there's people all over the world making the music right now, you know.
If I can do it, anyone can do it. I'm not British. You know, it's not a London thing anymore, it's a global thing.
I'm not trying to be better than Britain. That's not my role. I'm trying to just like be happy with the damn music, stay satisfied with what I'm doing. I love what the British are doing. I love what the main guys are doing. Because if it wasn't for those dudes, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. You know what I mean? If it wasn't for those guys, people like Reinforced that basically started everything, I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be happy at all. So there is no competition, basically. There is no best. We are just basically a hybrid of what we are, a child of what they created.
Personally, I don't care. Like, I mean, if it doesn't become media sensation, if, you know, eclectic girls aren't on the cover of Rolling Stone, I'm not gonna cry because I never got into this expecting anything, and really if the media gets into it, it could just spoil it and it could cause a bunch of like ego crap that frankly like might ruin everything. So it doesn't bother me if they don't know about it.
I just think forgetting whether it's American or whether drum and bass as a medium is like 170 beats per minute, and like any music which is that fast, this doesn't necessarily appeal to the mainstream.
No, you're not gonna hear mass amounts of people listening to 180 BPM music with dark techno bass lines. I don't see that catching up. But then again, hey, trance, you know, what do we know?
3 years ago, maybe like 400 of import would sell in the States between all the distributors. 3 years later, you're looking at probably 3,000 copies of a 12-inch.
Say you have a big record, like in the first week or first 2 weeks, we'll do 350, 400 copies of one 12-inch. And I think there's maybe one store in England that does that many of a single, you know what I'm saying?
We sold out of it.
Selling drum and bass in America is one thing. Selling American drum and bass in America or anywhere is a completely different thing.
The distribution companies just wouldn't give it that chance, you know what I'm saying? They wouldn't even really listen to it for what it was.
People laughed at us, kind of, in a friendly way, you know, and I went home kind of chagrined and thought, okay, well, maybe it's not a good idea. And then I think my punk kind of roots came back out, and I said, Andrew, I don't buy it. If I were a kid into drum and bass, you know, of course I would buy the English things, but you get into something and then you want to be part of it. And being a part of it isn't just being passively consuming it. I think being a part of it is getting it and then making your own tracks.
Definitely the last year, It used to be on the wall, all imports basically, with like a couple, you know, there was basically Assassin's label. There was Green from San Francisco. Now you look at the wall and, you know, there's Vortex and there's Thermal, the higher label.
Breakbeat Science.
Then you've got all the local heads. You've got Herman with like Curious and RAW, and you know, you got Meeklan.
Here come.
So kids now are like, you know, their heart's into it.
I started Soundsphere in '96, and at the time it was really kind of a difficult thing to do because there wasn't really a whole lot of drum and bass going on in America. The labels weren't really interested in it. There was a few labels like Moonshine was putting out some stuff, but it was compilation based of, you know, mostly UK stuff, or pretty much all of it was at the time, because there wasn't really many artists doing much for drum and bass, like production-wise in the States.
Higher education came about as a way to represent American drum and bass artists, and our philosophy has been, for the label for higher education, is to sign a single from an American artist and have a UK remixer do a remix, so the records will get back into the UK and it will help get American drum and bass artists recognition over back into England.
I don't like to think of Vortex as a strictly US label. You know, I mean, obviously we're based in the US, but it's not like US artists only. You know, I think we like to embrace quality music wherever it may come from. Although I think the emphasis is not even just US drum bass, but more West Coast.
We started as primarily a US drum and bass label to uplift the artists in the US. As we went along, we all the people we knew, just whether they're from the US or not, started offering us music because we were doing a good job, and you know, it's, who would want to turn down great music?
Certainly it's funner in a lot of ways to play just for the heads and like come out with those tough jams or whatever and like take it there, but to really play for people that haven't heard drum and bass before and maybe didn't like drum and bass, and play it in a certain way so they're like, oh wait a minute, now I kind of see what's going on. I see the True Intent taking that position a lot, like bringing people over that were maybe like house heads or hip hop heads or whatever, and they're like, okay, now that we talk about it, it's cool.
When you've got, you know, a record from Thermal coming out, and then 2 weeks later we had a record coming out, and then 2 weeks later there's another one from Numa, and you're just going bang, 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 and everyone's getting it to all the magazines, and you know, the distributors are waking up, the stores themselves around the States are waking up and going, man.
Unlike a lot of the other electronic music, drum and bass draws everybody. From punk rockers to like the 80s pop rock, like little like drum and bass kids, ravers, skater, everybody, all the aspects. You don't see that in the other styles of electronic music as much.
Radio, I think, is the main obstacle to drum and bass really getting huge in America, because radio here is so tied up with advertising dollars that they're not really willing to take a risk with anything.
Radio in America is like, you know, 10 years behind most countries in terms of what they're playing. So I don't think you'll ever hear, you know, Botec on KTU, no.
Every sort of underground music movement needed an underground media to carry it and to help it grow. And right now, the internet is the most viable form of media and the most powerful form of media in the world. It's growing, and the people that would be into this culture and this music are the ones who've adopted this you know, medium early. They're the people who are always online because they're not finding, you know, the shows they want to see on the WB network, and they're not finding the music they want to hear on KISS FM.
Basically, I think the internet kind of forms like a grid around the world so that anyone can just log into any type of stream. Just with us, you know, we're just broadcasting DJ sets for a couple hours. There's no commercials. There's no, you know, bids to our sponsors.
People have
it's
like
just
gone
raw
to
music.
prison and shit for doing pirate radios and stuff.
Obviously, the whole jungle scene itself is a community, but this is just an extension of that. I wasn't trying to create, you know, a jungle scene. There is definitely a jungle scene. I was just trying to give them a voice or a platform to speak on outside of the parties, you know, because they only happen, you know, twice a week in clubs, maybe 3 or 4 times a week. Definitely wasn't to make money because I don't advertise and I don't make any money off of it. I just wanted to give back to the scene.
It was so difficult to get the radio station to respect DJ culture. I mean, here it is at the end of the 90s. It's nothing new, right? But they're still like laying on their laurels from breaking punk rock out in the late 70s. Like, yeah, well, we did. You're like, well, okay, but now here we are 30 years later or 20 years later, and let's do this. Can we get some decks put into the station? And we'll pay for them. And they really didn't go for it, actually, ironically.
It took forever. We worked with the hip hop program and another one of the electronic music programs to throw a party, raise the money for turntables and the whole equipment, and finally, after being on the air for like 2 years, we finally had a cabinet at the studio with our turntables, and we don't have to haul it from home anymore, and you know.
I think pirate radio really needs to happen here.
But we don't have that here. You know, everyone has the internet, but you have to go out of your way and turn your computer on and go to DubLab and listen to someone's set or tap into a live set. But if you have pirate radio, if you have a radio that you can tune in 20 things within a couple of seconds and possibly check out some guys in an abandoned building whipping out records all night, that's a whole other story.
I like the idea of exposing drum and bass. I'm not scared that it's gonna get taken or cheesified.
And whether it's gonna change the scene and things like that, you know, maybe it will, and maybe a lot of people in the underground will be, you know, unhappy because their scene's getting infiltrated by all these new people, but, you know, it's not, you know, like anything, music is not just for one select group of people, and as a musician, if there's more people who are gonna hear my music, it'll make me happier.
There's always gonna be an underground, and no matter how big anything gets, even if drum and bass blew up and was on every radio station all the time, there's still gonna be people that are pushing the boundaries of it. Things that maybe aren't acceptable to do on the radio. There's always going to be people who are trying new things and experimenting and, you know, breeding different genres together.
I think really, man, it's going to take people for it to blow up in America. It's not going to be just drum and bass how it sounds or did sound in England or London, whatever. It's not going to be like that because the experience in America is totally different. It has to be some kind of aspect of like how we feel inside of it. You know what I'm saying? To really take hold here, because we have so much here already. You know what I'm saying? America's like the media monster of the world, really. So it's like there's so much coming out of here. For something to come into it, it's kind of like, it's different. So it has to take hold here. Like the kids down the street gotta listen to it for it to really grow here.
In 5 years, American drum and bass will have its own sound. It will be different from what's going on other places. That's just because where we live, how we live, what's around us.
We have to represent the American style, and the American style is with funk and with soul. That's America.
I wanted to just keep changing so it can keep me alive still. So when it's almost like having a different wife every month.
You can do whatever you want. And who's to say that drum and bass can't be 140 BPMs either? Who says? Who says you can't have songs? No, who says that? It's just the drum and the bass. It doesn't say the drum and the bass at blah blah BPMs. It's just the drum and the bass. And that's the way I look at it. Some people might look at it different and think, no, you're wrong. But then again, that's what makes my fingerprint different from yours.